On paper, the town of Ashford is an economic anomaly. While similar municipalities struggle with decaying infrastructure and empty storefronts, Ashford thrives. The streets are pristine, the schools are heavily funded, but that prosperity relies entirely on the financial gravity of a single resident, Richard Vane. Looking at this map of Ashford, the scale of his influence becomes clear. Vane Motors, Vane Plaza, the Vane Foundation, even the local hospital bears his name. His personal wealth single-handedly underwrites the town's survival, paying for everything from church renovations to the winter grocery bills of struggling families. Yet, the people of Ashford display a strange psychological reaction to their benefactor. Residents actively avoid making eye contact when Vane is in public. If his name comes up in a diner or a hardware store, conversations immediately stop. There is a rigid, unnatural silence surrounding the man who pays their bills. The millions of dollars flowing into Ashford's schools and hospitals serve a very specific function. The charity acts as a continuous transaction, economic salvation provided in exchange for a collective agreement never to ask where his money, or his power, actually comes from. The center of that power sits completely isolated on the edge of the town limits. Vane's estate is a sprawling property deep in the woods. Despite the luxury of black marble and towering windows, the house projects a heavy, suffocating silence. There is no staff, no background music, no echoing footsteps. I know this because my mother cleaned that house when I was 17. While she worked upstairs, I wandered into the basement and found something completely out of place in a residential home. At the end of a long corridor sat a massive steel door with no handle. Standing perfectly still beside that door were two men in suits holding rifles. Before one of them calmly ordered me back upstairs, a sound bled through the thick steel. It was a weak, rhythmic banging, someone hitting the metal from the inside. This timeline tracks a disturbing trend that began years later. A local journalist started investigating Vane's finances. A resident accused him of illegal land acquisitions online. Within 48 hours of those public criticisms, both individuals vanished. The destination of those missing people was finally captured by a local podcaster named Marcus. He secured this night vision footage showing black SUVs arriving behind Vane's mansion at 3 in the morning. The men stepping out of the vehicles are pulling physically restrained captives through the back entrance. The path of every missing dissident, every teacher, mechanic, and nurse who spoke out, leads directly to the soil beneath Vane's estate. Proving that required breaking into the compound. Marcus and I crossed the perimeter fence in the middle of the night, navigating through the dense, pitch-black woods surrounding the property. The surface of the estate held that same dead silence from my childhood, but as we pressed closer to the foundation, the noise returned. Faint, weak, human banging, echoing up through the dirt. We located an unlocked side entrance and descended into the basement. The architectural layout hadn't changed in years. The long corridors stretched out in the dark, leading straight to the exact same location, the steel door. Only this time, the heavy metal was pushed slightly open. The gap released a suffocating wave of thick chemical preservatives, masking the sharp, metallic smell of rotting meat. Pushing that door wider meant leaving the protected, surface-level reality of Ashford entirely. We stepped through the gap. The space beneath the house bears no resemblance to a residential basement. It is an enormous, cavernous room, designed with the sterile precision of a clinical facility. Look at the sheer scale of the equipment. The floor is lined with rows of reinforced metal cages. Humming medical machinery and vital monitors route directly into the arms of people strapped to hospital beds, with hundreds of feet of tubing disappearing into the ceiling. The individuals trapped inside those cages are in severe biological distress. Their skin is entirely gray, their eyes sunken. They look completely drained, as if their very vitality is being siphoned away through the IV lines. The missing journalist gripped the bars of his cage, his voice a dry rattle. He pointed to the monitors tracking cellular regeneration, not for the patients, but for a single external output. He whispered that Vane was using the captives as a biological battery to restart his own aging clock. Thousands of liters of chemicals and IV fluids move through these tubes every hour. The machinery is siphoning a specific compound from the captives and pumping the refined result toward the floor above. The banks of overhead lights snapped on simultaneously. Richard Vane stepped out of the shadows, smiling. Up close, his physical age is staggering. His skin stretches tightly over a skull lined with thick, dark, unnatural veins. He explained, absolute terror acts as a unique chemical catalyst. When the human body reaches peak panic, it produces a specific hormone that, when harvested and concentrated, can halt and even reverse cellular decay. Before we could move, the heavy steel doors slammed shut behind us. The automatic locks engaged with a heavy click. And as Vane stepped forward, hundreds of voices began screaming. They weren't in the room with us. The sound was coming from even deeper beneath the floorboards. The facility plunged into total darkness. In the pitch black, the mechanical clicking of heavy cages opening echoed through the room. Something moved incredibly fast in the dark, and Marcus's screams were cut short by the wet, heavy sound of tearing flesh. The screams echoing from the sublevels suggest a massive, hidden infrastructure. This is an entire subterranean ecosystem fueled by a constant, renewable supply of human fear. I ran blindly toward the hallway, relying entirely on the layout from my childhood memory. The only option was to tear through the woods, leaving the screaming behind, and driving until the town limits were miles in the rearview mirror. 3 months later, a familiar headline appeared online. Richard Vane had publicly donated an additional $50 million to the town of Ashford. The residents threw a celebration. They went on local news to praise his generosity, completely ignoring the empty houses and unexplained absences of their own neighbors. But during the broadcast, the camera accidentally pushed in too close on Vane's collar. Visible right at the edge of his neckline are fresh, violent scratch marks. They aren't from someone attacking him. They are the marks of something trying to claw its way out from underneath his skin. Ashford's prosperity is built on a literal foundation of bodies. Every new school and paved road is the byproduct of the screams beneath the woods. A transaction the town has decided is an